Hello, welcome today. My name is Brooke Michael. I'm one of the advisors here at the University of Michigan-Flint in the School of Nursing, and today we're going to talk about our early assurance program into the MSN and DNP program. So let's start with our first slide that talks about what is early assurance. So early assurance is a added value to our current BSN students, whether that's you in a RN to BSN program, a traditional BSN program, or our accelerated second degree BSN program. And it's for that student that wants to further their education beyond the BSN into one of our MSN and DNP tracks. So it basically kind of holds your spot or holds your seat in our competitive admission BSN to MSN and DNP program. So there are 5 different tracks that we offer here at the University of Michigan-Flint in our MSN DNP program. All 5 of these are nurse practitioner tracks. All 5 of these tracks have a MSN option stop out or continuing on to the DNP. There are 5 different tracks. There is acute care gero, there is primary care gero, there is neonatal nurse practitioner, there's family nurse practitioner, and then there's psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. So the first thing you will do is that you're going to be filling out a Google form to indicate that you are interested in early assurance. Now, this Google form, we're going to talk about when you can fill them out depending on which program you are in, but all of them are about a year from graduating. So when you're about a year from graduating with your BSN, that's when you're going to fill out this Google form. Now, it's a tricky timing. You can't fill this out when you're more than a year away. So if you're a year and a half or 2 years away from being done with your BSN, that's not available to be filled out yet. But also, you don't want to fill it out when you're less than, so like you're 6 months away from graduating or something like that. So you want to make sure to fill this form out right when you're about a year away from graduating. And we're going to talk about what that looks like for each of our different tracks. So first, I'm going to talk about my RN to BSN students. So this is only applicable to my RN to BSN students. So my RN to BSN students, these are 4 of the required courses in your curriculum. These 4 courses, NSC 180, Nursing 300, 307, and 316. Once you have completed 2 of these 4 required courses, it doesn't matter which 2, but you need to have at least 2 of these done with a B+ or better. You can fill out this Google form to hold your seat or hold your spot in the MSN and DNP program. Again, you cannot fill out this form until you completed at least 2 of these classes. Then your second step is that you must maintain an overall GPA of a 3.5 or better at the University of Michigan-Flint. This includes all of the classes that you're taking at the university. If you have any general education classes that you're going to be taking with us, those will be included. This does not mean that you need a B+ or better in every single class. You just need a B+ or better in these first 2 classes before you fill out the form, and then an overall GPA of a 3.5. Now, when you're going to pick your start date, when you fill out this form, you're going to pick the start date that you want to start into graduate programs. So when do you want to start into that nurse practitioner program? You may not pick a start date that is before you will graduate with your BSN. It can always be later, but it can't be earlier. So for example, if you were getting ready to graduate in December of 2025, the earliest you could fill out that application to start into MSN and DNP would be for the January or the winter term of 2026. Same scenario if you're graduating with your BSN in December of 2025, you cannot pick to start in the fall of 2025. Again, you could pick winter of 26 or fall of 26 or even winter of 27. It could be way past the time you get done with your BSN, but it cannot be a semester before you start your BSN. So that's on that Google form when you're ready to start and fill out. So again, my RN to BSN students, once you've completed 2 of these 4 classes, which are traditionally in your first semester with us, go ahead and fill out this form indicating which semester you want to start into the MSN and DNP program. Now I'm going to talk to my traditional BSN students. So my traditional BSN students, it's going to be that same overall GPA. You need to maintain a 3.5 GPA overall at the University of Michigan-Flint. For all programs, this does not count transfer credits. So anything you took and transferred in, it doesn't count. It's just everything you've ever taken at the university. Again, to reiterate, that does not mean you have to have a B+ or better in every single class. What it means is that you need to have the overall of a 3.5. So like if you got a C in a class, no worries. If you got a couple of A's, it's still going to average your GPA out to that 3.5 or better. So you're going to fill this form out when you're in your 4th semester in your BSN program. This would be, like I said before, about a year before you're graduating. You will need to know your cohort number when you fill out the form, and you'll need to know your grade in pathophysiology. So make sure you have your transcripts or your SIS account up and ready and handy so that you'll know those answers. Again, just like the RN to BSN students, you cannot pick a start into graduate programs until you have completed your BSN. So again, when you're filling out the form, if you're a December 25 graduate for your BSN, the earliest you could start into graduate programs or the MSN and DNP curriculum would be January of 26th. You can always pick a future term past that. So if you want to break, if you want to work for a while, if you're starting a new job, all of that is totally fine. But you can pick, like I said, that January 26, you could pick fall 26, you could pick winter 27, but nothing before when you will graduate. It's also a good idea to give yourself some wiggle room. Maybe don't pick that immediate turnaround just in case life happens, you get a bad grade, you have to retake, and that graduation date doesn't come around the same way you thought it was going to. Keep in mind, for my traditional BSN and my ASD students, you must have your nursing license completed before you can start into graduate level curriculum. So again, back to that same scenario of a December 2025 graduate, if you have not passed your NCLEX before the start of winter of 26, you will lose your spot in graduate programs and you'll have to reapply into the regular pool. So again, if you're a December grad, my suggestion would be to wait until fall semester so that you give yourself plenty of wiggle room. If you're a May graduate, May of 26, let's say, and you want to start in the fall of 26, that's okay because you're giving yourself like 3 months, right, to finish and pass your NCLEX. But when you have that quick turnaround of a December graduation, I don't recommend picking the next winter term to start. And it's the same form for every single program. It'll just ask you specific questions once you indicate which program you're in. So this is for my accelerated second degree BSN students. My ASD students, you fill out this form when you are 2 semesters in your BSN program. And so that's going to be, like, again, I said, about a year before you're graduating. And you must, again, same scenario, maintain that overall GPA of a 3.5 or better at the University of Michigan-Flint. Again, this is not counting your previous bachelor's degree credits if they were not at University of Michigan-Flint. So if you had credits from a different college or university, those do not count. It is everything you're taking at University of Michigan-Flint. And then again, it needs to be that overall average 3.5 GPA when you graduate. Again, you're going to need to know your cohort number and your grade in pathophysiology when you fill out the form. And same scenario, you cannot pick a start date into your MSN and DNP curriculum until you have graduated with your BSN and passed that NCLEX. So make sure that you're giving yourself enough wiggle room to graduate on time and also to have that NCLEX passed. So let's talk about what your next step is. So you've met the criteria. Either you're my RN to BSN student and you've completed 2 of those 4 classes with a B+ or better, and you filled out the form. Or you're my traditional or my ASD student and you're a year from graduating and you filled out the form. After you fill out that form, then it is your responsibility to book an appointment with our graduate level advisor, Ken or Julie. So first fill out the form, and then book an appointment with our graduate level advisors, Ken or Julie, within 3 weeks of filling out the form. If you have not booked an appointment within 3 weeks of filling out the form, then the early assurance form will go inactive. So you'll have to do it again later. So again, book an appointment. It can be a phone, a virtual, or a face-to-face appointment. You don't have to come to Flint. It can be phone or virtual, but you need to book with Ken or Julie. At this appointment, Ken and Julie are going to go over your transcripts and make sure a couple of things. One, that you're about a year from graduating, or at least you're close enough to graduating. And two, that you haven't missed the graduate level application deadlines. So they're going to check those two things. After that appointment, as long as you've met the criteria so far, then that's when you will get your acceptance letter to say that you qualified. So let's talk about steps so far. Filling out Google form, booking an appointment with Ken and Julie to go over your transcripts, and then you will get an email with a letter of acceptance if you qualified. That letter of acceptance is always contingent, of course, upon you completing your BSN on time and passing your NCLEX on time for my traditional and ASD. My RN to BSN students already have their NCLEX passed. So this is the website where you can book a face-to-face phone or virtual appointment with Ken or Julie. So let's talk about your next step. So your next step after that, so we got filling out Google form, booking with Ken and Julie. Step 3. Step 3 is that you must fill out the graduate level application by the deadline of the semester you want to start in graduate programs. So you'll see those deadlines here, but it is your responsibility to still fill out that form. It's to fill out the graduate program application, I apologize, before the deadlines. So if you picked to start in the fall of 26, fall of 27, fall of 28, whatever that is, you need to have everything turned in on the graduate program application by April 1st, no later. Even if you haven't graduated with your BSN yet, you still need to turn everything in by that deadline. If you wanted to start in a winter term, whether that's winter of 26, winter of 27, or winter 28, the August 15th before, you would need to have everything turned in. We're going to talk about that on the next slide. So again, this is step 3. Make sure you fill out the graduate level application before the deadlines. Sorry, it's not going to the next screen. So here is everything that must be turned in by that deadline, basically 6 months before the semester you pick to start. So you do need to turn in the application. You need to turn in a copy of your nursing license if you have it. If you've not passed yet, no worries. You will need to turn one in as soon as you pass. You need to submit a supplemental application, and you'll see the link there. You need to turn in 3 letters of recommendation. You need to turn in a professional goal statement. And then just so that you're aware, there could be an interview process. It's not likely, but sometimes we do interviews. So now I'm going to talk about 2 tracks that have additional requirements. So the family nurse practitioner, the psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner, and the acute care GERO have no work requirements to start. So again, you can start right away without having any work requirements. So if you're graduating in May, you can start the next fall. If you're graduating in December, you can start in the next January or winter term, as long as you have, graduated on time and passed your NCLEX. But these 2 tracks, acute care and neonatal, these 2 tracks do have work experience requirements. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about acute care only. If you are not interested in acute care, ignore what I'm about to say, because this is not applicable to you. So you do need, for acute care only, 1 year full-time work experience, or around 2,000 hours as an experienced registered nurse. So it can't be something else, but you have to be an RN in a critical care unit. And then it's going to list out what we consider critical care and the experiences we want you to have. You do need to have ACLS and BLS certification. And just so that you're aware, although you can live out of state potentially in a lot of our tracks, this track, you do have 2 clinicals that must be completed in the state of Michigan. So for my RN to BSN students, if you have already had a year of experience in these areas, you can go ahead and start into this track potentially as soon as you graduate with your BSN. For my traditional and my ASD students, you would need to pick, if you were interested in acute care, you would need to pick a full year after you graduated to start into this program because you would need at least 1 year experience in this as a registered nurse. So again, if you're graduating in May of 2026, the earliest you could start into this track would be fall of 27 because you would need 1 year of work experience. Same scenario if you're graduating in December of 2025, the earliest you could start into this track would be winter of 2027 for my traditional and my ASD students because you're not been a working nurse. My RN to BSN students, you could potentially already have this experience and start straight into this track. Now, if you don't see your critical care experience, but you think it should count, you can always email Julie. Her email address is at the bottom. Let her know the critical care experience that you have had as an RN, and she will let you know if it qualifies. Now we're going to talk about the neonatal nurse practitioner track. So again, if you're not interested in neonatal, just ignore me for the next few minutes while I go through this slide. So for my neonatal students, you need at least 2 years of full-time experience as a registered nurse in a level 3 or level 4 neonatal intensive care unit. For, again, my RN to BSN students, there is a chance that you already have had this experience, and when you graduate with your BSN, you could start straight into this track. For my traditional and my ASD students, same scenario. Again, if you're graduating in May of 26, the earliest you could start in this track would be fall of 28, right? Because you need 2 full years experience. Same thing if you're graduating in December of 25, the soonest you could start in this track would be picking winter of 2028. So again, my traditional and my ASD students, give yourself 2 full years after you graduated with your BSN when you're filling out that initial Google form as to when you want to start in this track. You cannot start straight away into this track for my traditional and ASD students because you have not had 2 years experience as a registered nurse. You also need to submit a verification letter identifying that your practice experience meets or exceeds the minimal requirements. And this letter may be written by your nurse manager, your supervisor, your neonatal nurse practitioner. And if you are not sure about your experience, you want to double check it. Again, you can always reach out to Julie and she will let you know if it counts. So now we're going to talk about some common questions that a lot of students have about early assurance. So can I repeat a course to get a better grade or improve my GPA? Absolutely, you can. Just keep in mind that if you are not at that 3.5 GPA when you graduate with your BSN, if you're wanting to improve your GPA, it's always best to retake an exact class at the same university because the new grade trumps the old grade. So if you took nursing, I'm just making something up, nursing 110 and you had a C in it, if you retake nursing 110 and got an A in it, then the A grade is the only thing that is calculated in your GPA. Now the old grade will always be on your transcript, but it's not calculated in the GPA. It's like it doesn't exist. Whereas if you just take another class, whatever it is, an additional class, then it's just averaging those grades out amongst all your courses. Before you retake a class or try to improve your GPA, please reach out to your advisor to see what's going to be best for you. What if I need to choose a different start date than the one I originally picked in my application? If you do, your early assurance will be revoked and you will have to apply into the regular pool for the BSN to DNP with MSN program. So it's important that when you're going to fill out that Google form, that initial step 1, and you're picking your start date, that you're picking the start date you know you want to start. Because if you're picking a different date, you will, and you don't graduate on time or don't pass your nursing license on time, or you just change your mind, you will not be able to keep your early assurance seat. You will just go into the regular pool of applicants. Can I take time off? It is not suggested once you start into your MSN and DNP coursework. This program is kind of cohorted, meaning it's built upon each other. Some classes are only offered 1 time a year, so if you take time off, it could delay your graduation up to a year. Can our BSN students transfer in those pre-admission courses like 300, 307, 316, or 180? Yes. So if you transferred in one of those, you absolutely can transfer them. You don't have to take all 4 of those with us, but keep in mind that you do have to have a B plus or better in those if you're planning on using it on the Google form. If you're not using it on the Google form, it's no big deal. What if the BSN to DNP with MSN application deadline is before I will hear back about early assurance? You must turn in that graduate program application and all your paperwork before the BSN to DNP with MSN deadlines. If you waited to do your early assurance application and the next review date is after the BSN to DNP deadline, it will be too late for early assurance. That's why I say make sure it's in that time frame of a year out, right? So to avoid this, apply for early assurance as soon as possible. So again, RN to BSN, as soon as you've completed the first 2 classes, which are traditionally in your first semester, one of those first 2, and then for my traditional and my ASD, when you're about a year from graduating. Because if you've waited until right now to apply for your MSN and DNP early assurance and the application deadline has passed for graduate programs, then it's too late, right? So always try to do that as early as possible. How long will it take? So for your MSN, like I mentioned before, there's a stop out point for the MSN. And so right there, you could set and be a nurse practitioner, or you can continue on to the DNP. You are going to pick, when you do that secondary graduate step 2, or I'm sorry, step 3, you're going to fill out that graduate level application. You're going to pick if you want to be a part-time student or a full-time student. When you do that, part-time students, it will take you 2 years and 8 months to get to the MSN. For a full-time student, it's going to take 1 year and 8 months to get to the MSN. The DNP is just 1 year past the MSN. So it's only 1 more year after you finish the MSN. So from the day you start in grad programs to the day you graduate with your DNP is a total of 3 years and 8 months for part-time and 2 years and 8 months for full-time. Can I work full time? Not if you're planning to go to school full time. There is not enough hours in the day to go to school full time and work full time. When you look at those curriculum guides on our website, you will see how many clinical hours are in that MSN and DNP program. There is not enough hours in the week to work full time and go to school full time. Even if you're going to school part-time and working full-time, or vice versa, going to school full-time and working part-time, those 2 things are going to consume all of your time. So anything that has to do with full-time, whether it's school full-time or work full-time, if you're trying to take on part-time of the other of school and work will be what consumes your time, just between those 2 things. So if you have outside family obligations or community obligations or whatever other commitments you may have that need to take up your time other than school and work, you want to look at part-time school and part-time work, or no work and part-time school. Just keep that in mind. How many classes do I take each semester in the MSN and DNP program? Part-time is an average of 2 classes a semester, full-time is an average of 4, and you always go year-round with full-time. Part-time, sometimes you have a summer off, sometimes you don't. Why should I do the DNP instead of the MSN? That's because in the future, if you're planning on being a nurse practitioner in the next 10 years, then we recommend going ahead and getting your DNP. Although you can be a nurse practitioner and set for your exam on the MSN, positions are starting to require or want the DNP. Also, legislation is potentially moving toward requiring the nurse practitioner to be a DNP. Once you get your MSN, you're grandfathered in. They can't ever take that away. But again, the jobs are going to continue to move towards the requirement of the DNP. Tuition and scholarships. So tuition just change each fall semester. There is our link right there. You can click to see the tuition. That'll be graduate level when you're ready to start into the program. We do offer a couple of different scholarships in the Nurse Faculty Loan Forgiveness Program. If you're interested in either of those, please click those links to read more about them. So that's the end of our presentation. We thank you so much for listening through. If you have additional questions and concerns, you can book an appointment with your advisor to ask additional questions. Thanks and have a great day.